Chapter 13. News. In a cavernous spaceship hall, Oshun and other cyborg trainees waited in line against the wall. A burly Sax woman who resembled a man marched up and down in front of them. "I'm Vice Admiral of this squadron, and you can call me Admiral Marsh." Her boots continued clanging as she paced and her voice echoed. "We'll sleep in our cryo-sponges after a Mayleedian freighter collects those too injured to fight who could not or refuse to accept cybernetic supplements." Oshun wondered whether those going home would be pleased and what would await them there. 6 months into the journey, the spaceship will stop to release our 5 quantum particle engineers from cryosleep. Once their paralysis fades, they can upload your individualized games before they return to cryosleep. Marge stopped briefly and studied a few teenage girls before stalking again. "You shall remain in a state of cryosleep and awake in the game." After stopping to stare at a towering albino boy with yellow eyes, Admiral Marsh seemed to report directly to him, which received suppressed giggles from other teenagers. "You look like a native. You'll likely infiltrate one of the communist communities in Vorta, along with other comrades of Menidian and Renidian ethnicity." His white ears turned crimson before the flush crept along his cheeks. Oshun pulled in a strained breath. Perhaps she'd live with the communists too. It seemed safer than fighting them. "However, I shall not talk about that now. I thought I'd demonstrate what you have and what you may accomplish with your augmentations before you sleep." She gripped onto his metal fist. "Do you know you have the ability to turn your hand into a gun?" He shook his head and squirmed. She continued to clutch his appendage. "Think it." He scanned up the line of young adults, then turned his gaze back to the burly woman. "Think what?" "Order to transform your hand into a handgun." "Change my hand into a handgun," he said, looking into his palm. Laughter broke out as nothing resulted. Admiral Marsh gave them a fierce look. "Don't say it. Verbalize it in your mind, but don't shoot." He closed his eyes and nothing happened. She tiptoed back with a long face and examined the adolescents. "Now, I request you all attempt what I just instructed." She quirked an eyebrow at him. "Name?" "Richard." "Richard. I need you all to..." Her head whipped to the side, then her chin dropped and she strode towards the end of the row. Curious heads poked out and a couple of teenagers leaned forward to look. Marsh stopped in her tracks and pointed at them. "Get back! You're not at kindergarten. This is a military training." She strained to listen to the hushed words as the Vice Admiral talked to a girl. Some kids muttered to each other proudly as they changed their hands and arms into numerous firearms. Oshun drew in a long breath and squeezed her eyelids together. "Make my right hand become a pistol." Nothing transpired. "Change my hands into laser guns." Still, nothing happened. The woman marched back down the line with a smirk pasted across her mouth. She repeated, "Good, good," every time she passed someone who'd created a gun. A large mixed-raced boy with pale brown skin was grimacing as he studied his metal hands with yellow eyes. "Don't worry." She stopped and faced him. "You'll get there in the end." She continued along the way, assigning a number to each person. When she joined Group 9, When Oshun joined Group 9, her shoulders relaxed upon recognizing Teresa's tall and lean frame. She stood in the space beside her. The young woman looked down and smiled. "Hi, Oshun." "Hey. Wow, you got your arms and legs done." "Better than not having any, I guess." Her throat constricted when she saw Teresa only lost half of an arm. "I'm glad you survived." Heat radiated through Oshun's chest, and she covered her grin with her cornrow braids. She wasn't used to receiving kind words since joining the squadron. "Thanks." A voluptuous blonde stretched out a sniper she had transformed from her arm. "See what I did?" She peered around for Admiral Marsh, who busied herself down the hall. I don't get how it's possible to aim that thing when it's attached to your shoulder. The Papsnan woman with bright pink skin and hair narrowed her rose-coloured eyes. There's a target in my vision. Wherever I point the piece, I can see where it'll shoot. Beats the usual sniper scope, a short boy said in a squeaky voice. Did you visualise that enormous gun? The Papsnan asked. The Sax flicked her blonde hair with a jerk of the head. No, I imagined a pistol, Teresa giggled. Let's find out what we're capable of producing. Oshun found the visualization worked. Next, they had a workshop about manually extracting tools and weaponry from attached and detached limbs and appendages. After operating their attachments by hand, they learned how to use the power of their mind. Marsh also explained how to trigger gadgets and weapons by undertaking different breathing techniques, tapping the teeth together in certain patterns, and contracting various muscles in specific rhythms. Admiral Marsh, can we speak to each other in our minds? Chonglin jutted out his chin. Unfortunately not. She turned towards him. None of your apparels are connected to Planet Net. Is it possible to? Another boy asked. Yes, but government agencies are concerned that if they hooked you up to an international or interstellar internet, it could pose safety risks. Like, the boy scratched his chin, someone could hack us. She nodded. Cyber criminals. There are ethics involved. You will have free will. She taught them how to release drones from compartments inside their mechanical extremities. Oshun cringed when she ordered her right toenail to open, and a team of robot ants crawled out and filed in a line, waiting for her orders. A section of her elbow contained 5 mechanical mosquitoes too. They controlled the tiny machines using their index fingers as remote controls and monitor them via overlapping holomaps accessed through the visual cortex. The cadets could inject enemies with poison from these tiny robots or release it from poisonous darts stored in various chambers within their robotic parts. Finley had to do everything from his shins, knees, ankles, feet and toes because he was only a little cyborg. Because he was only part cyborg. Oshun had access to unlimited weapons and spying contraptions. Admiral Marsh smirked, forming a double chin. I won't mention the poisonous gas you can all discharge, or you'll kill me. You are lucky to have this deadly self-defense mechanism. While surgeons operated on you all, they fitted nano-filtering bots inside your alveoli of your lungs. Poison gas will not affect you. After the meeting, Marsh let them socialise, and attendants rolled in trolleys of food. Oshun shuffled on the spot, watching as her group dispersed. Everyone talked in cliques around her. Her cheeks, neck and ears felt impossibly hot as she froze to the spot. Too ashamed to stand alone, she marched towards a group where Chonglin chatted to 5 admiring women. No one seemed to notice her standing on the outer rim. With a rushed breathing and a rapid heartbeat, Oshun listened too. He mimed chopping something as he held 2 clasped hands above his head and hacked down. And I smashed them up with my axe, all the victims' blood from which the slugs sucked into their bodies sprayed everywhere, but I didn't mind. Chonling? She asked. His expression became sour. What? I wanted to thank you. The girls nudged each other and rolled their eyes. Yeah, whatever. He glanced down his flat nose at her, then waved her away. Now go and play with your dolls. This conversation's for adults. His admirers laughed and some whispered to one another while pointing at her. As heat flushed through her body, her nails bit into her palms. It's not my fault they forced me to join a group of self-obsessed teenagers to fight a war on an alien world. A brunette crossed her arms under her boobs and sneered. Then why did you? That's none of your business. She's hiding something, a bronze-skinned Indite with a red dot between her eyebrows said. No, she's not, a deep voice behind them said, accompanied by a pale hand on Oshun's shoulder. No one ever told her the reason. She flinched and glanced up at Finley. Oshun is the best gamer here. A government agency picked her for that reason. She'd sure as hell beat any of you at a competitive warring game. No one spoke a word as he continued. I was listening long enough to hear all the grief you've been giving Oshun just for saying thanks to Chonglin for saving her life. I order you to stop. She swallowed down the humiliation. Oshun, he nodded towards the door. Come with me. He led her through a corridor and into his steel-clad office. She sat on a cold seat. You shouldn't have said that. Now they'll all hate me even more. They'll continue bullying you otherwise. That's human nature. You were too scared to stick up for yourself, so I had to defend you. I was about to. Stop it. He sat on the opposite side of the desk. I'm your commander, and don't you forget it. She lowered her face. I have some news about your mother. Huh? He nodded. Tell no one about this discussion. I shouldn't have communicated to you about it. She shifted her butt on the hard surface. Did they bring her back to life? They never even tried. It was all a big stinking lie. Coldness hit her core. She's dead? He nodded again. Sudden dizziness took over her as she aimed for the door, but Finley stood and blocked her way. Sit. She attempted to put on a brave face by tightening her jaw. Why did you tell me? To stop your foolish hoping. This is reality. You want me to feel bad? Of course not. I wanted to help. But now I won't perform as well as a soldier. I've lost my faith in everyone. Good. You should trust no one. Not ever. Curiosity crept over her mind for an instant. What had Finley been through to be so hateful? I'm telling you because you don't have to do this anymore. The Commander-in-Chief will talk to you soon and offer you a space on the Mayleedian freighter with others returning to Nerthus. And he'll tell me about my mum? Of course not. The Commander-in-Chief will probably say your mum's alive. Then when you get home, you'll hear something stupid like her organs suddenly failed. He gestured to his desk. Come, sit. She did as ordered. Who else do you have on Nerthus? Who else do you have on Nerthus? No one. What about your father? I never knew him. He left my mum when she told him she was pregnant. No uncles, aunts, grandparents. She shook her head. Mum's all I ever had. I guess they'll send me to an orphanage. Why are they even offering me a trip home if I'm so weaponized and they like my gaming? Because you're too young. You're working for the military goes against interstellar labour laws. The Mayleedian government kept out of this before and was only funding our mission, but now it's changed its intentions and will supply more troops from the fertile moon. It terrifies the chief in command that Mayleedian soldiers might catch wind of you. I mustn't be adopted. I can't go back. I have nothing there. You can start a new life and be safe. No, I don't want to. They may force you. Chapter 14. Burned. Although Frankie had it all now, the emptiness in his heart wouldn't leave him. He reclined on a chair in his area of tropical heaven outside his reed house. At least Dave wasn't dead, like Mum and Dad, but that didn't stop him from missing the killer. How was Olior getting on? Whining and crying for him, no doubt. He reached into a sack on the black grass and pulled out one of the many rags given to him for mopping sweat from his brow. He wiped the perspiration from his face, then opened the collar of his t-shirt and rubbed his chest and neck dry. Frankie, are you there? It's Zarita. He let out a bark of laughter and strode over to the rail which ran along the front of the small house. A button with a speaker and a microphone sat on its metal surface. He pressed it. Hello, I'm here. I know, I can see you. He looked around. Where are you? There's surveillance all over. Not spying, just making sure everyone's safe. He blanched. Are there cameras in my bathroom? No, only outside. We do not overstep people's rights to privacy. His shoulders relaxed. Why did you call? He'd been hoping she'd offer to read to him, and thought of sitting inside the coolness of her apartment was appealing too. That boy who brought you here from the cave of the mouth. He saved me from falling down that big black hole. Is he back? No, his sister is. Where's her brother? Captured. He felt dizzy, and his voice cracked with emotion. By the communists? Their military, yes. It can't be. How did she escape, but not him? She can tell you that herself. She wants to meet you. He quietened, turning inwards. Would she blame him? Do you remember where the elevator is, which I brought you up by last time? The lift in the south wing? That's right. Take it to -13, then open a small compartment on the inside, scan your fingerprints and eyes. It'll display all the instructions. There's only one other floor, -14. You remember where I live? Yes, but Don't worry, I'll meet you outside the elevator. The locals shouldn't see too much of the Five Sisters. We like to stay down here and out of sight. He gazed at the speaker with sudden focus. What did the leaders do all day? A chill crept up his spine. What did Xing's sister want of him? When Zarita led Frankie into her apartment, he faced two bold females, one purple and one white. They must have showered and dressed because they wore Zarita's long grey robes instead of the prisoners' striped uniforms. The armchair practically swallowed the skeletal 12-year-old, whereas the young Fennec woman stretched out in the other seat, looking just as skinny. Frankie's stomach churned as he reminisced on the men, women and children's expressions when they lined up against the wall for Dave to shoot. Nausea set in, and he shuffled on his feet. I'm sorry about your brother. Frankie, don't stand there. Zarita extended a palm towards a small stool beside the bookcase, and he sat. I've already prepared tea for the three of you. She poured it into 4 cups and left them on a central coffee table before pulling out another stool for herself. Your brother saved my life. Frankie saw his feeble reflection from the girl's gigantic black eyes. She ignored the story he was preparing to tell. Where did you come from? A concentration camp. Zarita shuffled on her bottom and straightened. He didn't tell her before because she hadn't asked. Not a prisoner, though, the purple-skinned woman said. He flushed. No. I thought I'd seen you before. She turned to the others. He walked past the window when we were picking ropes in the thread room. She held up her fingernails for Zarita to see. And that looks nasty, the Bluvian woman said. I can put some healing balm on. You have Xing to thank for your sanctum here. You'll never have to do anything like that again. Xing, Frankie swallowed. What a weird name. I saw you too. Not just Bella. The Bluvian girl's face wrinkled in an odd diagonal slash. Please don't say that you and that tall, greasy man killed the occupants of Wing 9. Those machine guns are the worst, Bella said. Zarita shot to her feet and covered her gaping mouth. I'm sorry. No one said Dave was going to execute them. The man realised I'd hate it. Afterwards he told me the bosses wanted me to train as a killer too. That's why he brought me there. Xing's sister shook her head and muttered something. Before he knew it, she grabbed her cup and dashed its contents into his face. His cheeks, eye and half his forehead seared with pain. Isa! How could you? Zarita hurried Frankie down a tunnel and into a room covered with green tiles. Heat pounded in his eye, cheek and head. He tried to open his lid. Ow! Dear, this looks bad. She moved a basin away from a tap on the wall. The sound of sloshing and thundering water echoed all around. Lean your face under the tap for at least 30 minutes. But the floor will wet. It's a wet room. That's what it's designed for. There's a plug hole in the floor. I'll get you a stool. Try to open your injured eyelid and rinse the inside too, if it hurts. Even if it hurts, we must reduce inflammation. It ate his neck to lean under the tap, but the fluid cooled his pulsating burns. Opening his lid stung like hell, but he forced it to flutter under the stream. Zarita returned with a small wooden stool and helped lower him down. The water ran down his t-shirt. May I cut off your t-shirt? Yes. She left and came back with scissors, then cut it away. I'll get paramedics. Keep your whole burned face under the water, okay? Her footsteps hurried into the distance. The sound of the girls screaming at each other flared from the living room. His elbows pressed into his sides as he continued to douse his burns. With luck, Isa wouldn't come in and hurt him again. The volume of Isa's voice and footsteps increased. He turned his face away from the running tap and squinted at her skinny frame standing in the doorway. She let out a guttural roar. Ah! I don't care if I scarred you for life. You shouldn't even be alive. It ain't my fault they caught your brother. I know, but you came with that man who killed all those people, innocent people. I never knew he was going to do that. He flapped his hands. I told you that previously. His entire face burned and pulsated. Too scared to turn his back in case she did something again, he continued to stare at her massive black eyes. I explained to you all. I didn't know he'd do that. Why were you friends? He took me from the slums across the ocean. I was as poor as muck. Ever heard of a place called Osbox? Of course, I'm not stupid. No one said the commissar would want to make me a killer too. Her groans got louder and turned into screams. Spittle built at the corners of her cracked lips. I've lost everything. My dad died, and my stepmother. Now my stepbrother's dead or being tortured in that hellhole. And it's all because of you communists. She pointed her finger at him. I only joined them a month ago. I'm not even a soldier. I didn't know about the concentration camp before that day, and it ain't fair to blame me. I was the scum of capitalist society before then. You go back and rescue my brother if he rescued you. She put her hands on her hips. It's the least you can do. Repay his kindness. He is kind. Jitters filled his belly. He'd hoped never to see that place again. If he returned, perhaps they'd capture him or hand him into the place he'd been living and call him a traitor. Then what would happen? Let me splash my face. It hurts and it's hot. She stamped away. Zing screamed in agony as the tormentor twisted slowly at his broken shin. Ah! Tell me where you came from. Never! He twisted again. Tell me! I said never! He tensed as the wrenching sent burning fire up his body. This continued until he passed out. When he awoke, he trembled uncontrollably in bed, shared by many more. 2 waning white moons glowed through iron bars. Feeling hollowed out and writhing in crushing pain, he imagined dying and ending it all. If he died, everything would be okay. He couldn't take the torture for much longer. The fact he knew he would never give in to their questions made his bladder weaken. He urinated all over his groin. The wet warmth travelled up his back and around his buttocks as it soaked into the mattress. But that kind of discomfort didn't matter anymore with the state he was in. Adrenaline locked much of the pain out, though he still felt split in half and torn open. Had Isa got away? How about that Fennec woman? Was she a friend or foe? What would have happened if she hadn't come along? Perhaps they were both laughing in the comfort and warmth of home. Laughing? Impossible. The Fennec might laugh, but Isa would grieve for her dead parents and him. Perhaps the pain was a good thing. It kept his mind off Mum. Hopefully he'd join her spirit, if ever there were such a place as heaven. He couldn't stop worrying about Isa. If only he had a crystal ball and knew where she was and what she was doing. What if she's lost? She'd worry about him too. He'd probably die without her knowing. He had to die. It was the only way out of this physical torment. But it would be difficult to leave this life without learning whether he'd fulfilled Mum's dying wish.